Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Monday, 19th May 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. United Kingdom. The UK and the EU have finalized a post-Brexit agreement to deepen ties, including a new defence partnership and reduced food and drink checks, potentially boosting the UK economy by £9 billion and lowering food costs. EU fishers will continue to access British waters for another 12 years. Prime Minister Keir Starmer is hosting EU leaders for a summit to enhance relations, describing the deal as beneficial for fishing, cutting red tape, and eliminating uncertainty from annual negotiations. Separately, analysts foresee a surge of inexpensive Chinese vapes entering the UK market due to tariffs imposed by Donald Trump. The UK also summoned the Iranian chargé d'affaires amid ongoing tensions concerning Iran's nuclear program and the repercussions of the Russia-Ukraine war. Ukraine-Russia conflict. Russia launched a significant drone attack on Ukraine, targeting Kyiv and destroying residences, resulting in at least one fatality. Before planned discussions between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy met with Pope Leo XIV to explore avenues for ending the conflict and expressed gratitude to the Vatican for its willingness to host peace talks. Zelenskyy also conferred with us, Vice President J.D. Vance. Donald Trump plans to converse with both Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelenskyy regarding a potential ceasefire in Ukraine, believing he and Putin are uniquely capable of negotiating a truce, despite the current impasse in direct talks between Russia and Ukraine. United States. Former President Donald Trump intends to speak with Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelenskyy about a potential ceasefire in Ukraine. He believes he and Putin are uniquely positioned to negotiate a truce, but the impact of these talks remains uncertain given stalled, direct negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. Trump's tariffs are predicted to cause a flood of cheap vapes from China into the UK market, impacting trade dynamics. European Union. The UK and EU have reached a Brexit reset deal that includes a new defence partnership and reduced checks on food and drink, removing some trade barriers after months of negotiation. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Union, and Prime Minister Keir Starmer of Britain are gathering in London to formalise the reset of post-Brexit relations. The agreement also allows EU fishers access to British waters for an additional 12 years. Iran has summoned the UK chargé d'affaires amid persistent tensions surrounding Iran's nuclear program and the consequences of the Russia-Ukraine war. Israel has launched a major ground offensive in Gaza, escalating the conflict after ceasefire negotiations collapsed. The Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, have ordered the immediate evacuation of residents from Khan Yunis, Bani Suila, and Abbasan in southern Gaza, designating the area as a dangerous combat zone and warning of an unprecedented attack targeting Hamas infrastructure. Heavy Israeli strikes in and around Khan Yunis have already caused casualties, with reports indicating 11 deaths and numerous injuries. Despite the ground assault, Israel will permit a limited amount of basic humanitarian aid into Gaza after nearly 3 months of blockade. The Director General of Gaza's Health Ministry expressed uncertainty about when the border will open for aid. Israel reported that all public hospitals in northern Gaza are out of service, and the Indonesian hospital in North Gaza is reportedly under siege. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has stated that the military will take control of the entire Gaza Strip territory. Anti-war protesters in Israel were dispersed by police for blocking a military road during the Gaza assault. Within Israel, Wahat Salam Nev Shalom, a village dedicated to fostering peace between Jews and Palestinians, is seeking support from the UK to counter a proposed 80% tax on foreign donations. Turning to the Netherlands, demonstrators in The Hague marched, urging their government to take more decisive measures to stop Israel's military campaign in Gaza. China's economic landscape reveals a complex interplay of factors. Despite ongoing trade tensions with the US, Chinese exports and industrial output have surpassed expectations, with the latter rising 6.1% in April. This resilience is largely due to manufacturing strength, although domestic consumption has softened to 5.1%, potentially necessitating supportive policies following a pause on tariffs. Weaker consumption trends are overshadowing factory strength. The Chinese government is responding with stringent austerity measures to curtail wasteful government spending on projects, meals, and flowers, representing the most aggressive cost-cutting since 2013. State bodies are also being directed to increase purchases of domestically produced electric vehicles, EVs, for official use, building on similar initiatives from earlier in the year. The China Securities Regulatory Commission, CSC, is spearheading reforms in the mutual fund industry in response to directives from the Politburo and State Council aimed at improving capital markets. Chinese tax authorities are focusing on global investment income, requiring investors to report overseas income dating back to 2021. Furthermore, China has imposed anti-dumping duties on plastics, palm copolymers, from the US, EU, Japan, and Taiwan, impacting industries such as auto parts and electronics. In technology and defense, China is extending the combat range of its UAVs, with the drone mothership Brewed planning its first mission by the end of June, capable of carrying up to 100 small drones with a 7 km range. On the international stage, China announced plans to expedite the construction of a dam in Pakistan after India threatened to cut off water supplies from the Indus River. Shifting focus to the United States, the U.S. Navy is grappling with resource allocation challenges amidst China's growing naval power. In trade-related news, U.S. companies are among those facing anti-dumping duties in China on plastics, palm copolymers, and oil. Turning to Pakistan, China has pledged to exit the construction of a dam after India threatened to cut off water supplies from the Indus River. Across the Atlantic, the European Union finds itself among those impacted by China's recent imposition of anti-dumping duties on plastics, palm copolymers. Meanwhile, in Japan, drug manufacturers are focusing on the country alongside China for weight loss drugs, areas where market penetration is low and innovation is on the rise. Finally, Taiwan is similarly affected by China's imposition of anti-dumping duties on plastics, palm copolymers. Australia has established a UN police peacekeeping course specifically tailored for the Pacific region, situated at the Australian Federal Police's Pacific Policing Development and Coordination Hub in Brisbane. In other news, the independent candidate Nicolette Burl has provisionally secured the seat of Bradfield on Sydney's North Shore. She holds a slight advantage of 40 votes over Liberal candidate Giselle Kapterian, which has triggered a recount. Turning to the United States, advocacy groups are mounting campaigns to protect Medicaid and Obamacare from potential Republican cuts of $880 billion, a move that could deprive 13 million Americans of health insurance. This proposal has exposed rifts within the Republican Party. Michael Fanona, a January 6 officer, has strongly condemned Donald Trump and Republicans for allegedly delaying a congressionally approved plaque honoring police officers, going so far as to suggest a disrespectful placement involving House Speaker Mike Johnson. Further developments indicate that a top negotiator expects President Trump's upcoming call with Vladimir Putin to be instrumental in assessing the situation and charting a course toward completing negotiations related to the conflict in Ukraine. Eric Trump has also visited Vietnam, following the approval of a $1.50 billion golf project for his family's business, as Hanoi negotiates with Washington to avoid trade tariffs. Donald Trump and his associates reportedly made us $320 in trading fees as the cryptocurrency dollar Trump's value soared before a meme coin dinner. Former US President Joe Biden, 82, has been diagnosed with prostate cancer. The World Health Organization is reducing its operations following the initiation of a year-long withdrawal process by former US President Donald Trump. Regarding Ukraine, anticipation is building for US-led diplomatic initiatives aimed at advancing a ceasefire, coinciding with a scheduled meeting between Pope Leo XIV and US Vice President J.D. Vance. Finally, Erin Patterson has entered a plea of not guilty to 3 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. Court proceedings have revealed that her mobile phone records suggest visits to 2 locations shortly after death. Cat mushroom sightings were reported. Japan is facing plummeting government approval ratings amid surging rice prices and upcoming national elections, intensifying calls for tax cuts to ease the burden of rising living costs. Finance Minister Katsunobu Kato has urged caution regarding tax cuts, stressing the importance of maintaining market confidence in Japan's fiscal stability, while acknowledging the country's current ability to raise funds through debt issuance. Farm Minister Taku Eito ignited controversy after stating he had never had to buy rice, later apologizing and clarifying his wife handles rice purchases. Random stabbing incidents are also contributing to societal anxieties, alongside increased interest in egg freezing among women. A Chinese national, Deng Hongpeng, was apprehended for allegedly injuring 4 boys in a hit-and-run. Innovation continues. A 7-Eleven pilot's delivery robots and a pterosaur fossil has been identified as a new species. The country has also halted poultry imports from Brazil, following the confirmation of a bird flu outbreak. Turning to China, Sichuan University withdrew a job offer to Japanese archaeologist Kazuo Miyamoto after facing online criticism. In Vietnam, dentists are adopting Japanese oral health care methods for children, addressing the widespread issue of tooth decay affecting approximately 90% of elementary school students. Finally, in Brazil, a bird flu outbreak on a poultry farm has prompted Japan to ban poultry imports from the South American nation. India is seeing complex shifts, from young Kashmiris removing defiant tattoos out of fear to women, filmmakers challenging misogyny. In cinema, Apple plans to ramp up production in India, diversifying its manufacturing away from China. As tensions with Pakistan ease, India is considering boosting rice exports with an earlier monsoon season. However, India has restricted imports from Bangladesh, calling it a reciprocal measure following the cancellation of a 2020 cargo agreement. Prayers for Western visas are common in Hindu temples, but some Indians are dismayed by U.S. deportations. Militarily, India's Prash helicopter is reportedly lagging behind China's Z-10, while India focuses on high-altitude operations against China and Pakistan. The India-Pakistan conflict served as a testing ground for Chinese weapons. China's military dynamics are being scrutinized after its weapons systems were tested during the India-Pakistan conflict. Reports suggest India's Prashan combat helicopter can't compete with China's Z-10. Apple is actively seeking to decrease its manufacturing dependence on China, favoring increased production in India. Bangladesh faces new trade barriers as India restricts imports, citing a reciprocal measure after cancelling a 2020 agreement that previously facilitated cargo exports through Indian land borders. In the United States, deportation practices are drawing criticism from some Indians, occurring even as prayers for visas to the U.S. and other Western nations are offered in Indian temples. Pakistan is seeing a potential thaw in relations as easing tensions with India are contributing to India's plans to increase rice export. The India-Pakistan conflict provided a live testing ground for Chinese weapons systems. India is dedicating military focus to high-altitude operations targeting both China and Pakistan. Romania recently saw centrist mayor Nicolae Dan emerge victorious in the presidential election with 53.6% of the vote. Dan's win over far-right rival George Simeon, who modeled his campaign after Donald Trump, has been welcomed by the EU. The election, marked by high voter turnout, was largely seen as a contest between Eastern and Western geopolitical orientations. In a related development, Telegram's Pavel Durov has alleged that French spy chief Nicolas Lerner requested the platform ban Romanian conservative voices before the election. Mexico is gearing up for a historic judicial election on June 1st, where more than 2,600 candidates are competing for 881 judicial roles. The nation's cultural secretary is contemplating legal steps against Mabist's production, firm after a visit to the Maya ruins at Chichen Itza, citing breaches of site regulations. In a separate event, 2 Mexican Navy members died, and 11 suffered critical injuries when the Cuauhtémoc, a training vessel, collided with the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City after a power loss during a promotional voyage. Meanwhile, Joe Exotic, known from Tiger King and serving a 21-year sentence for attempted murder, has publicly requested a pardon from Donald Trump, hoping to move to Mexico with his deported spouse after his release. Poland is currently at a pivotal moment, awaiting the presidential runoff election on June 1 after a tightly contested first round. Prime Minister Donald Tusk stressed the next 2 weeks will decide the future of Poland. The election features pro-European centrist Rafał Trzaskowski, the Warsaw mayor, against Karol Nawrocki, supported by the right-wing Law and Justice Party, Piesowicz. Trzaskowski led in the first round with 36% of votes, while Nawrocki received 29.54%. This election is key for the EU government and social rights, with Prime Minister Tusk hoping that Trzaskowski's win will allow for a more liberal agenda. Pakistan experienced a tragic explosion in Balochistan's Khila Abdullah district, resulting in 4 deaths and 20 injuries near Jabbar Market, with significant property damage reported. The IMF has increased pressure on Pakistan by raising the conditions attached to its bailout program to 50, which includes 11 new stipulations and cautions about possible failure. To counter India's global diplomacy, Pakistan is sending a delegation led by Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, the former foreign minister. The Pakistani ambassador to Beijing has welcomed both China and former U.S. President Donald Trump to mediate the Kashmir conflict. Meanwhile, police are actively pursuing the suspect in the murder of an Ahmadi doctor, underscoring concerns about the persecution of the Ahmadi minority. Europe is bracing for a wetter period after an exceptionally dry spring across the northwestern part of the continent. The UK, northern France, the Low Countries, and Germany all saw drastically reduced rainfall in May. High-pressure systems caused precipitation to fall to just 10% of the monthly average. South Africa's President, Cyril Ramaphosa, is preparing to visit Donald Trump at the White House. Their meeting will cover contentious subjects, including the perceived mistreatment of white South Africans and the Gaza conflict. Ramaphosa also aims to discuss possible business ventures with Elon Musk and will directly address Trump's statements about Afrikaner refugees. Portugal is on track to have a minority government led by Luis Montenegro. The centre-right ruling party is expected to win the general election, but without a majority. Public frustration and a fragmented political landscape played a significant role. Housing and immigration were key issues in the snap election. The hard-right Chega party saw a surge in support, Indonesia's search efforts for missing gold miners have been temporarily halted due to intense rainfall after a landslide claimed 6 lives at a distant mining site. Shifting focus to economic developments, WHAM, headquartered in Singapore, is weighing a potential $7 billion acquisition of Indonesia's Gaza, a move predicted to spark nationalist sentiment. Jumbo, an Indonesian animated film, has achieved record-breaking success, outperforming Frozen 2 as the nation's highest-grossing animated movie. Meanwhile, stirring debate, President Prabowo's administration has ordered a 10-volume series to reinvent Indonesian identity, prompting a renewed examination of former President Suharto's impact. The ripple effects of Moody's ratings downgrade of the U.S. sovereign credit rating are being felt globally. Asian shares are down, U.S. futures are weakening, and the dollar is also feeling pressure. Asian currencies are gaining strength, creating a mixed bag for the region. This strengthening benefits investors. However, it poses challenges for economies relying heavily on trade and tourism. Europe is witnessing a surge in the influence of far-right political parties, a trend that sees some integrated into governing coalitions, a stark contrast to the domestic challenges faced by Germany's Alternative for Germany party. Across the continent, Chinese e-commerce giants Temu and Shein are aggressively expanding, significantly increasing their advertising expenditures as they aim to capture a larger market share against a backdrop of trade uncertainties in the United States. Stellantis and Leapmotor, a Chinese electric vehicle manufacturer, are nearing a pivotal decision concerning production in Europe, with Leapmotor anticipating potential cost increases but firmly stating that they have no intentions to raise prices. Singapore sees its companies actively involved in Pertamina's petrol and crude oil tenders, even as Indonesia grapples with a significant $12 billion corruption probe into its state-owned oil and gas corporation. Meanwhile, in Singapore's domestic politics, Andre Low and Eileen Chong from the Workers' Party have been appointed as non-constituency members of Parliament, NSMPs, adding new voices to the legislative body. Indonesia is under scrutiny as Pertamina, the state-owned oil and gas giant, faces a $12 billion corruption investigation. The scandal has potential international repercussions, given that companies from Singapore frequently participate in Pertamina's bidding processes for petrol and crude oil contracts. France faces mounting pressures on its cognac industry from climate change and international tariffs levied by China and the United States, forcing producers to rethink traditional methods. Meanwhile, in French Guiana, the nation intends to build a supermax prison to incarcerate dangerous offenders, such as drug lords and Islamist extremists. Argentina is seeing families of victims from the military dictatorship meeting with EU officials in Brussels. They seek support for DNA testing to identify missing children. These families are criticizing President Javier Milei's attempts to halt the search efforts. Meanwhile, local elections are underway in Buenos Aires. The elections will indicate President Milei's current political standing. He aims to draw mainstream conservatives to his libertarian ideals. The Philippines' recent midterm elections faced scrutiny from EU observers who cited unacceptable levels of violence and credible reports of vote buying, urging legal reforms. Sadly, the nation also mourns the loss of Nora Honor, the iconic singer and actress, the superstar who died at 71. Anu's career began with teen movies and dramas, earning her a devoted following, Noranians. Yemen faces an escalating environmental crisis. The country's iconic dragon's blood tree is increasingly endangered. More frequent cyclones exacerbate the problem. Invasive goats also contribute through overgrazing. Political instability further threatens conservation efforts. The United States is shifting its foreign policy approach. President Trump is independently addressing several international issues. These include matters related to Iran, Gaza, Syria, and Yemen. This marks a departure from established practices. Traditionally, these issues involved close coordination with Israel. Sudan is grappling with the devastating consequences of the ongoing war, particularly the widespread sexual violence against women. The Rapid Support Forces, RSF, are accused of perpetrating systematic abuses. These include rape, forced marriage, and sexual enslavement. Amid this crisis, a support group in Port Sudan offers crucial services to survivors. These services encompass trauma counseling, medical aid, legal advice, and vocational training. Iran faces renewed scrutiny as U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff insists any future agreement must explicitly prohibit uranium enrichment activities. Turning to Canada, President Trump's tariffs on auto parts are causing job losses in Windsor, Ontario, significantly impacting the region's auto parts industry, which relies heavily on supplying components to the United States. Germany is grappling with the aftermath of an attack in Bielefeld, where a still-at-large assailant injured at least 5 individuals, prompting a widespread police search. Simultaneously, a significant shift is occurring in Germany's defense strategy, marked by a substantial increase in military spending and rearmament efforts. This pivot signals a departure from the peace dividend era that followed the Soviet Union's collapse in 1991, indicating a move toward a more robust and proactive national defense policy. Netherlands saw tens of thousands protesting in The Hague, demanding an end to what they called the Gaza genocide. Many protesters wore red and urged the government to increase efforts to stop Israel's actions. Their focus was on getting the Dutch government to withdraw its support for Israel. Saudi Arabia and Iran have resumed direct flights for the Hajj pilgrimage, the first since 2015. This resumption follows a China-brokered agreement in March 2023 that restored diplomatic relations after 7 years of strained ties. Turning to Thailand and Indonesia, the two nations have established a strategic partnership. This includes commitments to enhance both economic and defense cooperation, following the first Indonesian presidential state visit to Thailand in 20 years. Meanwhile, in Italy, Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni hosted a dialogue with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. This meeting highlights a diplomatic achievement for Italy. Meanwhile, Iran and Azerbaijan are conducting joint military exercises. These exercises aim to enhance border security and strengthen strategic relations between the two nations. In Hungary, approximately 10,000 protesters gathered in the capital to demonstrate against a bill proposed by Prime Minister Viktor Orban's right-wing government. Critics argue that the bill targets free speech and independent media. Over in Malaysia, Rafizi Ramli of PKR is intensifying his campaign efforts. This comes as Nurul Aiza Anwar, daughter of Anwar Ibrahim, competes for the deputy president post, sparking allegations of nepotism. Namna's 36 Ways of Writing a Vietnamese Poem, a portrayal of the Vietnamese diaspora, won Book of the Year at the NSW Literary Awards. This recognition follows international acclaim for his debut work, The Boat. In northeast Nigeria, a militant attack on 2 villages resulted in at least 57 fatalities, with 70 people reported missing according to witness accounts. Tragedy struck in Cambodia, where a lightning strike at the Angkor Wat Temple complex, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, resulted in the deaths of 3 individuals and injuries to several others. And that's a wrap for today's news. Because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.